Hi, so, as some of you may know, I recently watched the new movie from Netflix called K-Pop Demon Hunters, and I loved it. I had a few issues with it, sure, but in my review I landed on giving it a 7 out of 10, because even with its flaws, its amazing aspects still held strong. Now, if you go to the popular critic aggregate site Rotten Tomatoes, it currently proudly displays the score of 97% from critics, the current highest score from Netflix. This was interesting to me, because if I was mostly seeing 7 out of 10 scores in other places, and IMDb's score stands around 7.8, theoretically the Rotten Tomatoes score should be around 70 to 80%, but of course the RT score is really high. 7 out of 10 is widely considered to be an above average score, and Rotten Tomatoes is only measuring just that. What percentage of critics deemed the movie worthy of an above average score? It's not an average at all, it's a literal percentage of thumbs up to thumbs down reviews. This got me thinking. If from IMDb we can get much more information about the exact quality of the movie, rather than just knowing the general vibe of the reviews, what's even the point of using Rotten Tomatoes at all? First of all, let's briefly discuss how this platform works. If you, as an individual written reviewer, have over 2 years of experience working as a film critic, you can apply to become a certified critic for the platform. How this works is that the platform will check your review on your platform of choice. This could be anything from a YouTube video to written reviews, and it'll gauge the sentiment of the review. Rotten Tomatoes has not released much information about how exactly they do this, but it's likely done with an algorithm of some sort. The platform will then take the broader aspects of your review and put a brief summary of it on their website, with either a green splat or a tomato icon to signify whether you seemed generally positive or generally negative when talking about the movie. I believe this is a bad way of doing it, and it makes the platform fundamentally flawed. If the only measure you're looking at when gauging the quality of a movie is the general sentiment of the reviews, 100% could theoretically vary from being one of the greatest films of all time to being generally considered to be slightly above average but nothing special. With this way of doing things, you're actually getting a very small amount of information by looking at the score shown on the website. If every single critic in the world were to agree a movie was slightly below average, the score would be 0%. Even if nobody in the world thought the movie was the completely worthless pile of trash that score would justify. Now, these are both very extreme examples. Does this actually affect the practicality of the platform? The answer is yes. And an example of this is what I mentioned in the intro. K-Pop Demon Hunters is generally agreed to be a good movie, but not a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. But from the RT score alone, you would assume it to be the same level of quality as anything else with a 97% score. Some examples being The Incredibles, Knives Out, and freaking Spider-Verse. If something considered to be flawed in some ways but still enjoyable is put on the same level as some of the greatest works of art in the medium of film, I think that shows an issue with your metric. Now, all these issues may be forgivable, seeing as number scores as a whole is considered to be a very flawed way of measuring quality, as by giving one movie a higher number score than another implies that it's a better movie, even when the two films are vastly incomparable. This whole idea implies comparison, even when that would normally be impossible. Additionally, most platforms make use of averages, which is also a flawed system for a completely different video. That being said, I think knowing the average score, especially with large sample sizes, can be very useful to get the general idea of the mood of the critics. And you could argue knowing the percentage of reviews that are positive is also useful information to have alongside an average score, which it definitely could be. They are two completely different measures of quality, and the more information you have, the better you can gauge the quality of a film. This is why I love the Letterboxd system, where you can individually see the distribution of each score as well as the overall average, to get the most possible information out of a collection of ratings. This system also highlights individual scores, and this brings light to the fact that a single number really cannot tell you how much a large population enjoys a piece of media. Sometimes you'll see a film on Letterboxd where you can see half the people gave a really high score and the other half gave a really low score, which shows that the film was particularly divisive. Whereas on a system that mainly uses averages, the only information you get is the 5.0 number score. The reason the Letterboxd system is amazing is because it respects the fact that film is an art form, and with all things of its type, it's subjective. And even an average system, such as IMDb's, while still giving you vastly more information than RT, still doesn't show you the whole story or give much power at all to those who disagree from the generally accepted opinion. But 99% of people aren't going to dig very deep in order to see a general vibe of the critics' opinions of the movie. So if you had to choose between Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, use IMDb, I am begging you. Of course averages are flawed, but the information you get from an average is vastly more than how many critics thought it was good or bad. The issues I've mentioned about IMDb largely also apply to Rotten Tomatoes, and none of the issues with Rotten Tomatoes apply to IMDb. It's just vastly more informative in every way. And of course, none of this matters anyway, because it's entirely possible you'll completely disagree with both scores. But the reality is, most people will want to have a concrete number before going into a movie to see if it's worthwhile, and averages are just much more useful for that. Which is why what I'm about to tell you is so frustrating. Rotten Tomatoes used to have an average score feature that worked in conjunction with the percentage to give you more information and a better idea of quality. This is a lesser known feature because you had to click on the score in order to see it. Annoyingly though, this platform seems averse to giving out useful information, so they removed this feature 2 months ago and gave no official reasoning. Now the only way you can see this information is by using Wayback Machine, or just using another platform that actually gives out useful information and documents how it works. Now there is one sole good thing about this crappy platform, and this feature is good enough to almost make the platform worthwhile, and that is the audience score. It's really nice to have the tomato meter and the popcorn meter side by side so you can easily compare and contrast the two. The only issue is that the two meters use very different systems to gauge their score. The tomato meter being described earlier, and the popcorn meter using a more numbers and averages based approach, which makes sense as it would be very expensive to gauge that many reviews for sentiment. This makes the two scores much less comparable, and this feature is also made less useful by the fact Metacritic has the same feature but way better, using averages like IMDb instead of percentages. So, yeah. This is my rant about why I don't like to look to Rotten Tomatoes to figure out movie quality, and why I think less people should use this platform. If you do use this platform, that's fine. Either way, I personally have been looking at number scores a lot less before going into movies, because I think it's much more fun to try to form my own opinion, and I think an individual's opinion will always be vastly more useful than any form of aggregate. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of me talking about movies, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Letterboxd. Bye now.